everybody, and welcome to Scale Matters. For the ones of you who are joining us for the first time, this is a video series where I am, looking at all the issues on scaling in Europe. And this time, I am very happy to welcome Eric de Montgolfier. He is the CEO of the biggest association for private equity and investors in Europe. And I would say that with his 30 years of experience, he is very well placed to give us good advice on how to make Europe a much better place to scale. So hello, Eric, and welcome to Scale Matters.
Thank you.
So Eric, we know that unicorns in Europe in general tells us that they need around 100 to 200 billion euros to reach of funding to reach the stage of a unicorn. Do we have that kind of money in Europe, or do we need foreign investment to boost these unicorns in Europe?
Venture capital invested 20 billion euro in 2021 in startups and scale-ups in Europe, which is fairly substantial in terms of amount. But interestingly, investment in what we call late-stage investment increased 170% in 2021 versus 2020, showing that progressively European players are financing more and more scale-ups than in the past, which I think is a good sign. Mm-hmm. That said, the EU is without any doubt a net importer of venture capital to date. It's true that from I would say decades, the venture capital environment in the US has been thriving earlier and on a larger scale than what we saw across Europe. But I must say that the gap that we have identified a long while ago is more on the late-stage financing than the early-stage financing. Mm-hmm. And that's why I really welcome the recent initiative announced on Monday of the creation of a new fund managed by the EIF, which will support European tech champions. It's called the European Tech Champions Initiative, and it's bringing together money from 5 European countries: Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, plus the EIB, the European Investment Bank, who are pooling resources together to the tune of 3.75 billion euros to actually finance 10-15 of the largest European venture capital firms. Mm-hmm. So 2 reasons why it's important. One, for founders and unicorns, it gives a choice to decide to be financed from European sources versus from US sources, which are the main finance today of our unicorns across Europe. It's entirely in the hands, I would say, of the founders. From a European perspective, it gives another tool of European sovereignty, which is important because it's a way also to send a strong message to entrepreneurs and founders that they can stay in Europe, they can develop their businesses in Europe, they can increase employment level, job creation in Europe, and give back to the communities that have supported them for a while.
What would be like some of the parameters of saying, okay, we actually prefer American funding or European funding?
Capital markets in the US are more developed. The US is a single market in itself, which is quite attractive when you want to scale your business and develop your revenues at a quicker pace than you would do by selling to several different countries within the same, I would say, environment.
What you're saying is that Europe still has some barriers that other nations like the US, they don't face the same barriers because they have one single market. So we have tried now since 2015 to make like the CMU, making one market for capital in Europe, and you would say, many would argue that it's actually non-existing. So in the EU 27, average stock market capitalization amounts to around 58% of a GDP, and compared with 115 in UK and 150 in US. So what are the barriers, and how come we don't get this right?
So My perception that the CMU is not delivering on its potential. It's not being prioritized by policymakers as something really important. It takes a lot of time to align, I would say, all countries towards the same goal. There's some market fragmentation that we need to solve, which is not solved yet.
So looking at, I mean, now we've had a lot of public funding lately. We have had the RRF, we have had many initiatives on this. Those money are still spent within the country, so it's divided in buckets for the countries. Does it help these?
I think that we have an issue of regulation. We have a number of actually institutional investors who are not incentivized to invest in venture capital. If you look at banks, banks today are investing represent only 4% of the sourcing of private equity and venture capital fund manager on a European scale, which is really extremely small. If you look at insurance companies and the Solvency II directive, we have the same issue. The incentives are not really there to push insurance companies to support also venture capital, which in itself supports scale-ups and startups. Policymakers should be more supportive of the investors that are actually supporting scale-ups across Europe.
Digital Europe has now for 6 years run the Digital Europe Unicorn Award, and you are part of the jury, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you for inviting us.
We have 100 scale-ups all around Europe competing each year against each other to become the most scalable, innovative unicorn. I mean, what can an organization like Digital Europe do to help your organizations and venture capitalists? What can we do together as jointly to basically push this forward?
The companies we support to date in Europe represent 10 million employees. 10 million. It's a very large number of people within the European workforce. It's 4.3% of the European workforce. So we're also actually supporting a lot of people, a lot of communities, a lot of employees. I think it's a really virtuous circle that policymakers need to understand and to adjust to, so that they really help us get as much means to support this ecosystem that we both care about. And if you can help with us, it would be a pleasure.
Eric, as the DG of also representing 45,000 businesses in Europe and having 40 associations in the EU plus territory, hopefully we can also talk to the governments and get them to act as one team. Let's see if we can actually get some really key priorities on removing fragmentation and administrative burdens for investment in Europe. And I'm looking very much forward to collaborating with you. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you very much. It's a good objective that I share.